Good evening, everybody, and welcome on this amazing Sunday evening to the interview room. We are so grateful that each and every one of you are here this evening and that you have entrusted your time with Karen and I. We always feel so blessed to have so many friends out there in the world. From all over the world, from Australia to the UK, to our friends up in Canada, to Paris in Europe. Just folks from everywhere. We even have people from the continent of Africa. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your trust and for being with us here. And for Holly in Texas, Hannah from Morocco, Joanne from the UK, our friends across the pond. We love you all. We're so grateful, so grateful. And just wandered in from Kentucky. And of course, our friends in Hawaii. Aloha, everybody. Ireland, Mary, top of the morning to you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you. Northwest Florida is in the house. Myrtle Beach, M. Wood, Alabama, Switzerland, Arkansas, Utah, Diana, Reno, the biggest little town, North Carolina, where I was actually born in Jacksonville a long time ago. In Chattanooga, Tennessee, been there, love that place. Indiana's in the house, West Virginia, OC Cal, Orange County, we love you. Texas, hook 'em horns. Miss Mary's in the house, thank you. Colorado, Jersey girl, thank you, thank you. Walla Walla, Washington, Margot. I interviewed Wesley Dodd at Walla Walla State Prison. Well, we have a lot to go on here. I was a Marine Corps baby. Yes, KDV. My dad was stationed out there at Camp Lejeune, and I was born actually on the base. And welcome to Queensland, Nova Scotia. I have a lot of family up in Nova Scotia. The Dennehy side of the family is up there. So very, very, I've never been. Honey, we've never been to Nova Scotia. We need to get up to Nova Scotia. What do you think?
We need to put it on our list, not just a bucket list, but our must-do list.
Yes,
definitely. We need to do a Canadian tour. That would be so much fun.
Well, we
Canada's
did the
so beautiful.
Highway, remember when we cut across in Detroit? And
yeah, in Ontario. Well, and I grew up in Detroit, so Ontario was always a great place to go across the river to go to Canada. But
Butterbean's in the house from London. Love that name, Butterbean. I absolutely love it. Guam. My brother went to the University of Guam. We landed in Guam one time when my dad got stationed in in Yokohama, Japan, and we were on our way over there, and Guam was our stop for fuel. So welcome to the show tonight, everybody. And we want to thank, of course, if you're new to our show, we only have one request. and that's you subscribe to our channel, hit that bell, hit that like.
Yes, it's free to subscribe.
It is free to subscribe, and that's all we ask, that you hit that like and that subscribe, and then send this out on your social media networks. That helps our channel grow here. And of course, all of our mods. Honey, what can we say about these young ladies?
We have the best mods on YouTube. Sorry, everybody else. We have to brag. These ladies are fantastic. They are incredible. They're supportive. They are just amazing people. And we're talking about Miss Sophia, Maui Girl, Mimi J2, Laura Waldy, and Teresa M. We could not do this without our amazing mods. So
Yes.
we thank you so much.
And a lot of channels don't pay enough attention to their mods. I mean, we would hope that would change. We would hope that would change, because they really are the backbone to not only the chat and keeping everybody happy, but as everybody can tell, within the first 5 or 6 minutes already starting, hopefully you feel welcomed here. And all opinions are welcomed as long as they're within reason. And what do you always say, Karen? It's okay to disagree.
It's okay to disagree without being disagreeable. So if we can manage to do that, we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, most definitely. And a big thank you to, of course, our YouTube channel members. We love you guys as well, and our Patreon members. If you're not familiar with either of those two programs, the links are down below. Okay, so we're going to do another deep dive. Back in about 4 years ago.
Yeah, it's been 4 years already, which
Yeah.
is interesting. Go ahead, Chris. I don't want to step over you. Go ahead.
Well, 4 years ago, recently you had a chat with Melinda.
Melinda.
Melinda,
Right.
right?
So if you're just joining us, we're going to do a deep dive into the Suzanne Morphew case. We haven't really talked too much about the update since Barry Morphew, who, as you remember, was arrested for the second time in connection with his wife's murder. He was arrested back in June. And then just a few weeks ago, the judge changed his bail situation, and he was able to bail out. Although apparently wearing an ankle monitor with a whole bunch of rules, one of them being he has to stay in his Colorado house, wherever that is. He can't leave the state. He can't leave the country. They collected his passport, etc. So anyway, so Barry Morphew is out of jail awaiting trial for his wife's murder, the murder trial. So we wanted to go back. We did go back, and first of all, we reached out to Suzanne's sister again, her sister Melinda. And for those of you who've been with us forever, for a long time, you may have remembered the lengthy interview Chris and I did with her way back 4 years ago, right after Barry was arrested the first time for Suzanne's murder. Well, we went back and we rewatched that video, and I got to tell you, I was like, holy cow. I mean, I was stunned, and I told Chris, I said, we have to show this again, at least clips or highlights to our audience now, because I had forgotten a lot of the really key important things that Suzanne's sister shared about their whole relationship, Suzanne and Barry Morphew, where they started, how they ended up where they ended up. And then listening to that interview now with the layer of knowledge that we know, because obviously 4 years ago, they hadn't found Suzanne's body. Suzanne's remains were found in September of 2023. And then the autopsy thereafter showed that she died of that deer tranquilizer, BAM, otherwise known as BAM. And remember, in the arrest report and in the autopsy report, Apparently, Barry Morphew was the only person in the state of Colorado who had a prescription for deer tranquilizer, the exact deer tranquilizer that was found in her remains. So, things like that are really make it really interesting to go back and listen to Suzanne's sister, listen to what she shares, and then now we have this extra layer of knowledge and facts about the case, and we think it's going to be really interesting. So, um, that's what we're going to do. That's the roadmap for tonight.
Yeah,
Chris,
and so
what are your thoughts?
I mean, while we were, well, for everybody, so Karen and I, we went up to CrimeCon, as you know, in Denver recently, which was the first time we ever had gone up to, a program like that. We absolutely loved it. Loved meeting all of you out there, many of our friends. And on the way up, though, we stopped in the area where Suzanne's remains were found. These are pictures actually from the law enforcement uh, when they were out there recovering. And we were up on that road. If you see back here in the distance, in this particular photograph here, all of these cars were up there. So we were up there. We came down, and this was the general area of where Suzanne, had her body and remains were found. And we thought to ourselves, here we are going on what, almost 5 years now, Karen?
Past 5 years. Yeah.
Right, guys, and gals? I mean,
Five and a
almost
half.
five
Mhm.
and a half years, and we thought, you know what? We need to draw a little more attention to what Melinda had said, or about 4 years ago, and we had an exclusive interview with her back then, and we are still very close friends with the family, with Andy, with uh, you know a lot of the folks there. They all came out. We met them when we were living in South Carolina. We had lunch. They were doing some things there in South Carolina, so we
You're
ended
talking
up
about a few people in Suzanne's family.
Suzanne's family. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then of course, those of you who know who've been with us, we went to where she grew up. We went to her dad's root beer stand, still there, Jean's root beer. You get the best hot dogs there in Alexandria, Indiana. And it was just, it was really neat to get to know the family. And so we reached out, and right now, with all the court things going on, of course, they're very reserved right now because a lot of them are on the witness list. And so they don't want to compromise, Barry getting a fair trial, quote unquote. Um, and you're right, Charlotte. Why should they be allowed to bail out when they're arrested for taking another life? It's ludicrous. That just seems wrong. We cannot disagree with you. Our bail system, um, it seems a little laxed when you hunt down your wife. That said, what we want to do is go over because Karen, we watched it the other day, and Karen was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like you just said a minute ago, What what jumped out at you on this interview?
I mean, several things, many, many things. So, um, not because we're going to play it. I don't want to have a spoiler ahead of
Sure.
time. But again, for all of you, we know the facts of the case now, much more than we did 4 years ago. I'm not talking about Barry's cover story or that kind of stuff. I'm talking about um, what went on from that Friday night when Suzanne sent text messages. She sent a last text message to her sister that Friday night. Saturday, she was at the house alone. We know that. And sending other text messages. Um, we will get to that probably in a different video. We'll focus on that to kind of refresh everybody.
Yep.
Yeah, with that. But it's really interesting to hear Suzanne's state of mind, what she started to open up and tell her sister about her failing marriage, and all that leading up to the literally the day before her murder. And again, now we know we have a really good idea of what went on in that house between Suzanne and Barry. Again, not the cover story that Barry gave to police, but him allegedly using deer tranquilizer. Um, we know that she had that port in her chest from her chemotherapy, because she had battled cancer twice. The second round, she had just gotten over that in May of 2020, again, leading up before she was killed. And so there's just a lot of little details that her sister shares in that video that we have that are just really eye-opening again, now that we know a lot more facts of the case.
Yeah, so we're going to do a start and stop. So as you guys have questions in the chat, put that question mark after, and I apologize if I missed some of them. But to answer a couple of questions that have already gone by, yes, his children are still standing by him, and why he's getting a trial. That was the second question that had come up, and it's because it's our system here in the U.S. And and then Cat Age, did she have? He didn't expect her to be cancer. That's exactly right, and Melinda points that out. Really interesting. So without further ado, let's get into Melinda. We'll do a start and stop, and then wait till you guys, in retrospect now, listen to her interview, and we've cut it up, but it's really fascinating. Without further ado, Melinda Moorman.
To us a little bit about when Suzanne met Barry
And Karen still looks like she's 21 years old 5 years later.
what you remember of hearing about that.
Yeah, and what I heard about it, because at the time, again, I had left home and started my own adult life. But what I understand is that Barry and Suzanne met. My parents built a home.
Did we freeze, Chris?
I don't know if we froze at that point, but that should be rock and rolling here. Hang on.
Okay.
Let me pull it back out. That's interesting. Let me move it over here to another location. Let's see here. Sorry about that, guys. Be just a second. I'm going to put it on another source there so that that doesn't happen again. And then I'll just share my screen. All right. All right, stand by. Sorry, guys. Hang in there.
Try it again.
Hang in there. All right.
Do you have it? Because I was just going to add one quick thing.
Go ahead. Add one quick thing while I get it.
So the way this interview is structured, what we did with Melinda, we just kind of started the beginning, and obviously, and she brought us forward. So we first asked her about when Suzanne and Barry met. She talks about when Suzanne had cancer for the first time at age 21 before she married Barry. And then she kind of goes up to when they got married, their life in Indiana together, and then when things started falling apart for the couple. But talk to us a little bit about when Suzanne met Barry and what you remember of hearing about that.
Yeah, and what I heard about it, because at the time, again, I had left home and started my own adult life. But what I understand is that Barry and Suzanne met. My parents built a home on the golf course called Fairway Estates. and it's right in the middle of a golf course there in Alexandria, and it was a new subdivision, and they bought the first lot there, so they built a home, and Suzanne met Barry. He worked for the golf course, and as I understand, his job was to take one of the carts and he checked the sprinklers at night, checked all the sprinkler heads to make sure everything was in good working order. And I think I find my memory serves me, Suzanne would have been about a junior in high school. Of course, Barry, being older, had already graduated from high school, but he would pick her up in his golf cart, and they would check the sprinklers together on the golf course. And so that's how their dating really started. And yeah, so I was on the golf course.
Yeah, you know what's interesting, when we actually went to your childhood home, I mean, where she was smitten by him on the third tee, and it's interesting, one of the letters that she wrote to him that was put out, obviously, she talks about the first time they met, and she remembered being with him on the third tee, and that's the Yule golf course, if I remember right.
Yule, yes,
like
yes,
yeah, yeah,
yes, Yule golf
and
course.
and how she was kind of head over heels for him for a little bit
Yeah.
there.
Well, he
Um,
was somebody to be head over heels with. I don't know if you've seen pictures of Barry, but he was a very handsome Tom Cruise kind of guy, and he
uh-huh.
was the catch in Alexandria. Star athlete and extremely great work ethic. Barry's always been a.
Okay, so we learned something about Bear Bear. We're going to call him Bear Bear. He used to drive around town, Karen, remember? And he tell everybody what he would do. They'll love
Yeah,
it.
so the stories go by people who hung out in Barry's friend circle in high school that he had some kind of red, what was it, a Camaro?
Yeah.
Some muscle car,
Yeah.
and apparently he would literally like lift weights, lift a dumbbell. Actually, it was probably this arm because it hung out. He had it hanging out outside the window, cruising up and down the streets of, Alexandria. I believe that's where they were in Indiana. And, just picture the most like, macho type 1980s high school guy who thought he was all that and a bag of chips. And that, that's kind of the picture he was. And he was a baseball, I guess a baseball star for high school, as
Yep.
much as you can be back then.
Yep. That's as far as he tried to make it, but he wasn't good enough.
Hard worker, a wonderful provider for my sister and her girls, and his mother as well. And so those are things that need to be mentioned because they are absolutely true. And so I think my sister certainly was attracted to that. He was a very, very he was a very handsome guy. He had it all together, and a nice car and perfect hair. We like that hair. And and he
Gotta have hair.
and he was gotta have hair, and he was very athletic, and very popular. And yeah, and so they made a darling couple, that's for sure.
Now, when their relationship started to blossom, were there any when's the first time you remember meeting him, if you can remember, and first impressions?
I truly cannot tell you the first time I met Barry. I'm sure it had to, well, again, I at that time had moved away from home. I did not live locally, so I really can't speak to that specifically. I mean, I certainly remember their wedding. But again, I had started my own family. I was married,
Right.
and lived away out of state. So again, my brother Andrew is the guy who probably has a little better handle on the timeline of all that.
Tell us about the wedding. That was at Grace Baptist, right?
Yes, Grace Baptist Church.
What do you
in
recall
Anderson.
about that? What do you recall about that day, if anything?
Well, it was a very beautiful wedding. You know, Suzanne and Barry were both people of faith and strong faith at that. And Suzanne had started to attend church with Barry, as I recall. You know, she was raised more to the Methodist persuasion there in Alexandria. My mom was a lifelong member of the United Methodist Church in Alexandria. But when Suzanne met Barry, it seemed that she took on more of his faith tradition, which was more, I would say, of a fundamentalist Baptist background. And that was what she chose to do. And so her wedding, I do remember she was kind of upset with me. I'll tell a little funny story, because these are the things that sisters get into, I guess. But I had come for the wedding, and my mother had said to me that she wasn't real pleased with the dress she'd chosen. She just didn't feel as comfortable in it. And I said, well, Mom, you know, that's no problem. Let's just take it back and you get something that you like. And so we went to the dress shop, and I helped my mother, and she found a beautiful chiffon. It was just very elegant, kind of a peach color, but it was like a palazzo pant instead of a dress. And but it looked like a long gown when she wore it. My mom looked stunning in it. She loved that. So I said, Mom, wear what you're comfortable in. I was always telling her, yeah, Mom, I'm her cheerleader, you know. And so she did. We got to the church, and Suzanne saw her in these palazzo pant kind of outfit. And she got mad at me because she thought I talked her out of wearing a dress to a fundamentalist Baptist wedding and wearing pants instead. And so I got thrown under the bus for that. But that was kind of a little standing joke, you know. Don't tell your mother to wear something anyway. So that's, you know, that's just one of those little things sisters get into. But my mom liked what she was wearing. But there again, it reminded me that Suzanne had taken on a more legalistic, fundamentalist thinking, and had given up that liberty of, hey, it's okay to wear something beautiful, even if it is, you know, pants. So that, you know, to me, that was very important for me to remember. And I saw that change in Suzanne early on in her relationship with Barry, which I think plays into so much of their ongoing relationship over the years.
Interesting. So you caught some of the control issues almost immediately.
Yes. And what I remember about that day too, I will say Barry has two beautiful sisters, and they have beautiful voices, and they sang at the wedding a duet, and it was just beautiful girls.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah. I knew you were going to have me stop. Go.
Yeah, no, I think that's super interesting. So from Melinda was Suzanne's older sister. Right from the beginning, she saw her sister, who she described as kind of this passive, quiet, non-confrontational person. And then obviously Barry. Okay. And I just think it's fascinating. Again, this is it's not a blame game of anything, but her sister saw the control issue early on, right up front, you know, at their wedding, from what she's sharing. It's interesting. Your thoughts?
No, I agree 1,000%. And she, what's fascinating is she remembered it. I mean, right away, as we were talking to her. I mean, this was, and if you're just joining with us, this is an interview we did with Melinda. It's over 4 years ago now. And we're going back in retrospect, you know, thinking about what we know now and what she was saying then, we didn't know at this time. And so it's a fascinating dynamic here. But yes, to your point, honey, I mean, she picked up on it right away.
She did. And you know what? Another secondary reason Chris and I are going back and seeing what people who are actually are on the witness list. Melinda's one of the family members on the prosecution's witness list for the trial for Suzanne's murder. You know, it's really important. We don't know how the defense is going to paint Suzanne. My guess is it's going to be pretty harsh based on some of the things that have come out later about Suzanne, such as she was having an affair with Jeff from her past at the time she was murdered. So I think it's super helpful to dig into these details from people who knew Suzanne best before we get the prosecution's story laid out and then the defense's response to all this.
Great point.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
now around this
And you're not
time
seeing double.
was when Suzanne was first diagnosed with cancer.
Mhm.
This part is pretty sad, and I don't think a lot of people caught this. I didn't catch it originally. You caught it right away, woman to woman there. And guys, listen to this. This is pretty intense.
Do we have that right?
Yes, in fact, I did a little math today, and it looks to me like she was a junior. Now, this would have been prior. She was married in 1994, August. She also graduated Purdue that same year in 94. She was diagnosed, as I recall, in about 92. She was a junior, I believe, at Purdue when the diagnosis of this lymphoma came to her. She was either a sophomore or junior, right in there, 90, 91, 92 would have been. And at that time, she was right in full swing of college. And the diagnosis was an old age lymphoma, is what they called it. It's very, very unusual, very unusually not found in someone Suzanne's age. So there were a little bit of a conundrum on how to treat someone that young. She would have been 21 years old with an old age lymphoma, you know. So I recall my dad wanted to get a second opinion. And so he drove her to Mayo's in his van, loaded her up and took her to Mayo's in Rochester, Minnesota to get a second diagnosis. And certainly they did confirm the diagnosis that it was an old age lymphoma. She came back to Indiana and then they began the treatment for that lymphoma for Suzanne. So she would have started her chemotherapy about a junior in college, 21 years old.
Do you remember from that time how she handled it? What her, certainly anybody's reaction to cancer would be, extremely upsetting. But what do you remember of how she handled it and things that she may have talked to you about at the time?
You know, Suzanne's faith and Barry's faith, for that matter, was very, very strong. They faced it with faith and trust in God. And that's how they got through it, one day at a time. I shared the other day that taking the chemo at 21 years old, they had told her that the amount of chemo they would give her could render her sterile and unable to have children, infertile, I should say, and unable to have children, and that she could take precautionary measures and have some eggs frozen. And she and Barry, of course, were not married at that time, but were intending to get married. And they discussed it as a couple. They made that mutual decision to trust God and that they would not take those measures. And as it turned out, their faith was real and definitely came to fruition. As you see, Mallory and Macy, two beautiful girls. So
that is amazing. They exercised their faith. Even though the doctors told them, no, it's a no, that ain't going to happen. You're going to be sterile. Thoughts, Karen?
Yeah, no, I mean, she went through a lot at a young age. And, I can't help but speculate, did that help her get through a very difficult marriage, married to what, in my opinion, a malignant narcissist and a sociopath, in my opinion? Did she need that strength to get through as far as she did?
Yeah. I mean, how do you go from, starting with tragedy all the way through, to where he ends up doing what he's allegedly in custody for?
Yeah, let's keep going.
I do recall that pretty strongly. That was a real concern for both of them at such a young age, so.
Yeah, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we get that piece of the puzzle, so it's fascinating. So as they get married, as she was dealing with the cancer, how far into the cancer, did she get, and then did it go into remission and then the wedding was set, or what's the sequence in that?
Yeah, as I recall, as I said, it was about 1992, and she and Barry married in August of 94. So, it would have been maybe an 18-month to 2-year situation. Suzanne was very, very ill. As you've seen pictures of her, she was very, very petite, slight built, not an ounce
Yeah.
of fat on her. And she was very, she wasn't, what do I want to say? I don't want to say delicate, but she's a very refined, build and small build. And the chemo was very, very hard on her, extremely hard on her. She was a very pure person. So those drugs hit her very hard. My mother at the time and my dad had divorced. So it was my mother and my sister in the home there on Fairway living together. And of course, Barry was there as well and would not have been, and was, on board and completely supportive of Suzanne through her chemo. And I recall my conversations with my mother more than anything, how grateful my mother was for Barry's support. And that he during that time he was a strength. He was a strength to Suzanne, but also to my mother. And I recall her saying that Suzanne got so sick. My mother thought she would die from the treatment. Really, that's how sick she got, and she lost so much weight and was unable to eat. And I recall my mother saying that Barry would carry her through the house. That big, strong guy would pick her up, carry her like a little baby from one point to another because she was too weak to walk. So credit where credit's due. A lot of guys would have run the other way.
Chris.
He did not. And in that regard, in my family, Barry Morphew became a hero. He was a hero. And I do believe, as I've reflected,
Chris, it's important to point this out.
Yep.
When I heard Melinda say that, all I could think about was he thinking about when he carried her when she was 21 years old before they got married through her parents' house? Did he do the same thing after he allegedly, shot her with the deer tranquilizer and incapacitated her? Again, my opinion, these are just questions, but that picture of what she just described, in my head, I was back at their Salida house the night of May 10th, the day before Mother's Day. And, I don't know if we know the exact sequence of events, but did he pick her up and carry her at that point? Did he think about what it was, almost 30 years before, doing the same thing? It just jumped out at me. What do you guys think?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a deep thought for sure. To early on in their relationship, and it seems like the bonding's going on with the family as well. They're looking up to him as a strength around her. To picture that image of him carrying her around the house. The defense is going to play this all day long in terms of when she gets on the stand. They're going to walk everybody through what basically we're doing tonight with Melinda, because they're going to try to show him, that he has some type of feeling somewhere. Okay. But again, you contrast that to what you just said, and you see him at 4:00 in the morning after hitting her with this animal tranquilizer. And it's a sad scenario just overall. She's deceased, and now he's carrying her out to bury her in a field, potentially somewhere.
Potentially, yeah. We don't know, but she was taken out of the house somehow.
Yeah, it's a fascinating point and dynamic that
it's just a juxtaposition of two situations that were shared with us. One by police and one by her sister from 25 plus years earlier.
Yeah, swing of the pendulum.
That Suzanne and Barry bonded deeply during that time of cancer. I believe that my sister probably fell very deeply in love with Barry because of who he was to her during that time, and the trust that was built and the security that she felt during that time. So
it's very tender, and you know, there's the old saying that the depth of our pain is equal to the remembrance of our love, right?
Chris,
And
one more thing that just jumped out at me.
kind of
It's just a very minor point.
you know,
Chris, very minor point. Just
Go
want to
ahead.
make the point.
Yeah.
If Suzanne and her mom were living alone in the home, the parents were divorced, the father's out of the picture, Barry knew that Suzanne was vulnerable. And, you know, that I could see how she could attach herself to him, especially being a daughter of divorced parents. The dad's not in the home. One has to question and wonder, did Barry take advantage of that? Was that a normal course of what was going to happen anyway? Who knows? Just a thought. Let's
That
keep
is a
going.
great point, because remember, he is the hunter, and he is always looking for vulnerability. And, you know, she had suffered, you know, cancer 2 years before she got married. And then she's still into it, you know, 2 years later. And now he's, you know, projecting that he's the superhero, you know, flying in and taking care of everything. So, yeah, that's a great point. And if you guys hear Buddy in the background, he says hi by barking at a couple of dogs going by.
the early years of anybody's relationship. I mean, you know, being obviously in my career, have seen and heard these stories, you know, 1,000 times, and then there's always this other side that you say, what happened? How did it go from, you know, all of this to all of this, now where we are today, and sitting in Chaffee County Jail, and you know, where did the, you know, where did it, what happened, where did it go wrong, what happened? And so uh, you know, and thank you for sharing that. It was very tender, and you know, we want to be sensitive, you know, to you as well, and you know, we appreciate your consideration of thinking your memories with about your sister at that time, and quite frankly, and about Barry. I mean, I just, you know, you know, he is who he is right now, and so we'll keep moving through that. So so let's kind of move forward a little bit, Melinda, if we can, about walk us through. You know, she was just, every video I've ever seen of her, and I've only seen a couple, though, the one of her in the pizza place with all the girls, and you know, all of that, you know, the hot tub, and you know, they're all just, you know, goofing off there, right? And the, you know, but walk us through Suzanne's love of Indiana and that home where they built together with their girls. If you know, walk us into like the holidays, and you know, I'm assuming, and this is just an assumption, and correct me if I'm wrong. I'm assuming, because we went to the house, Karen and I went to the house and saw that this was a beautiful, you know, area, and then simultaneously, I could only stand on the street and you know, think about all of the amazing memories that were probably made in that residence. And unpack some of that for us, about Suzanne and Barry in the early years, if you have any memories in relationship to that.
Well, you know, I know that Suzanne and Barry didn't just automatically build that big house. They lived in some darling rental farm properties in that area for quite a few years, because Barry was a man who did not like debt. He just did not want to be in debt. And he was very clear from
Let's
the
just
beginning.
stop for 1 second, Chris. Let's do a quick pause.
Yep.
It's interesting how people evolve in their lives. Just, you know, Barry doesn't like debt. And then later we're going to get into how Barry borrowed $100,000 from Suzanne's dad to get the Salida, Colorado house, and all that friction, all that financial stuff with the family turned. I thought it was a really interesting comment with that. She said that maybe the younger version of him didn't, but certainly by the end, no holds barred. He wasn't like that at all.
Yeah, well, and we know, though, to your point, he was obsessed with money. And
Yes.
she's given us this indication. I mean, from the get-go, day one, he's all over this money thing.
The place he wanted to be able to pay for it, and so he worked very hard. And Barry was also a trapper and a hunter, and excellent trapper. And I don't know.
And he used to shoot squirrels. Remember, he shot hundreds of squirrels. We met up. Karen and I met up with his best friend, and as they were growing up, and he tells us that Barry not only would shoot squirrels, he would skin them within a minute, and then keep all their fur. I mean, that for me, that was like, you got to be kidding me.
Well, what's interesting is that very same friend is on the prosecution witness list.
Yes.
Maybe there'll be a connection between that and what happened to Suzanne's body.
Yes.
Just saying.
And yes, it is true, Brenda,
I'm going to guess that
he has bailed out, and he is out on a monitor. It's probably tied around the neck of his dog, and he's probably out at the bar.
Probably put himself through Purdue University. Nobody did it for him. So he's a very hard worker that way. But they lived in some darling little farm properties, rentals, and the years that they were waiting to build. And once they did build that beautiful property there on Cal Carson, it's just stunning. It's so traditional. I remember my mom, of course, Suzanne relied on my mom because my mom would build a house, and they shared a lot of things. And Suzanne shared a lot of the same tastes as my mother, growing up as she did. So the place was just very traditional and just beautiful. And I down to the brick. I remember when they were trying to choose the brick, and just they really took their time. And it was and of course, Barry being the landscaper, it was landscaped just beautifully. It was like a paradise back there. And I know that they spent many, many lovely years back there in that. I know Suzanne loved that house. It was there was a solitude to it, and a beauty all around it. The landscaping and the house itself. And it's funny because sometimes Barry would be gone. He would go hunting, maybe out west or whatever. She'd be there with the girls, and I know my parents were always concerned that she was there by herself. And aren't you a little fearful of being? My dad wanted her to get a big dog, but Barry didn't want to have any dogs because of his wildlife situation and hunting. But I know my parents would have loved for her to have a big old German Shepherd out there or something. They did finally put in an electric gate. But Suzanne said she was never afraid out there. Other people were afraid for her, but she was never afraid to be out there with the girls in that house. She was so comfortable there. So
yeah, that is way out there.
It is.
Yeah. We call that the boonies, right? It's way out there in the boonies.
Yeah.
Surrounded by farmland and yeah, of course.
Yeah, cornfields and then beans in the off season.
Yes.
Has it always been like that? The cornfields and the beans always.
That's Indiana. That's classic Indiana.
Classic, yeah.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
but they had.
Honey, just tell me to stop.
Okay.
Because I can see your mind going.
Okay. So here's my question to you, Chris.
Yeah.
As a homicide investigator who's done over 300 murders, probably closer to 400 at this point, but let's just say 300. When you hear, and we already knew this, but I just think it's worth chewing on this topic for a minute. When you hear that the husband accused of murdering the wife was a proficient hunter and landscaper, okay? And we know that Suzanne was allegedly hunted in her own home, and he used a deer tranquilizer on her. The hunter did. And then her body was buried somewhere, concealed for best guess, couple of years. And then as the medical examiner's report says, it was dug up and then moved to the location where it was found in Saguache County in September 2023. So there's the landscaper part of this scenario. So here's my question to you, Chris. What story do you think the prosecution will be telling the jury when they lay out the case against Barry Morphew for allegedly murdering his wife?
Well, I think there are going to be two angles. Well, maybe three. Some other dude, i.e. the DNA inside of her car, that they're saying could have been the registered RSOs. And then the second will be, well, I didn't do it. And if I did do it, it was an accident. So they're going to try to go down that lane. And it was driven by jealousy and, passion from the affair that, they're going to conveniently leave out that he was having an affair as well. But they'll focus on Suzanne. So they're going to make her look like she's the bad guy here in totality. And the prosecution's going to point out, though, in my opinion, that he has both skill sets, to your point, and he exercised them both in this case. He hunted her down, which was, refined.
Allegedly.
Allegedly from day one. Okay. And then to your point that he had, this ability to, even as Melinda says, he was an amazing landscaper. Well, okay. Well, he didn't leave that Bobcat from his truck. He did not disconnect that Bobcat. Even while we were up there, remember, we saw him driving around.
I remember.
Multiple times, and he had that thing. But what's interesting about it is the area that he took her to is what they allegedly call the boneyard, remember? And this is where all the wildlife, a lot of the hunters, after, they get the meat and they have this carcass, they take it out there and they drop it in that general area. So the fact that he was, methodically thinking through this, everything that he was thinking through, he properly executed. And that, I think, is going to go against him because it's showing, malice aforethought. It's showing that he's organized. It's showing what they call mens rea, that he has an evil intent. And then his post behavior from the first time, the fact that he ran to the civil courts and started to flip the switch back onto law enforcement and filed a, civil lawsuit, that's going to come up and bite him in the butt. Because a jury, if the prosecution can get it in to show character, they may be able to tie all of those other lawsuits that we found out about in Indiana into that as well, which will show a pattern of life. So I know that was a long answer, but I really believe he's going to have an uphill battle because you're going to get testimony like this from Melinda and others.
Yeah, very good point. I also want to address a comment or two I've seen and I saw in chat before we go back to the tape. Sure. A few of you have said that Melinda seems very kind, is speaking very kindly towards Barry. I mean, her words are her words. This is how she feels. But I do want to share with you a very recent statement she gave us. And she says that, quote, "I stand with the state of Colorado and the appointed authority, DA Kelly, and her prosecution team in successfully seeking a conviction of Barry Morphew this time around. I am hopeful." So that is from Melinda, who you see here on the screen. Again, this interview we're going back to was 4 years ago. That's a statement she just gave us a few days ago. So yes, she is speaking kindly. She's strolling down memory lane. She's sharing her memory and her thoughts and her feelings about Suzanne and Barry and their marriage and what she observed. But she is wholeheartedly standing with the prosecution in Colorado, and she is hopeful that they will seek a conviction of her former brother-in-law. So just want to clear that up.
Great point.
I know that Barry and Suzanne did a lot of entertaining. They did some family entertaining, certainly at the holidays, but they often had many of they had a lot of fellowship dinners. A lot of people from their church enjoyed that property. They loved to go out and have a big bonfire and have hot dog roasts and marshmallows and kids. And they had a lot of many happy years there together with the girls.
So, as you know, that's projecting itself right behind the scenes. Do you sense that? When did you first get a sense that things were kind of changing, potentially?
Well, one thing I know about my sister is that she was raised by my mother, and she and my mother were so very similar in temperament. And they both were very private people. They internalized things. They did not share easily or very much. It took a lot for them to share what was on their heart. So I think that I think Suzanne lived a lot of years believing that you keep things to yourself. Certain things you just don't talk about. Unfortunately, and I think the culture and even the atmosphere of her church family also lended itself to that type of thinking. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It just to me is that people become very private, and I think that things did start to change way before any of us recognized it because of that. Because Suzanne did not openly share, not even with my mother. And I do recall, I don't know if we want to go there, but in 2018, when she called me, the day she called me in Tennessee to tell me they were moving to Colorado, they were selling everything and making this big move cross country. And I was at the rec center walking my dog that morning. I remember it like it was yesterday. And I was very surprised. I had not heard of this. I had not gotten any inkling that was in the wind. So it was kind of startling, to say the least. So, but I wanted to be happy for her. Mallory was already in college, I believe, in Gunnison, and would have been probably a sophomore, finishing her sophomore year in 2018. And I know they missed Mallory a lot, and Macy missed her sister a lot. And I get all that, And I know that Barry being a hunter and outdoorsman, and they all love Colorado when they visit Mallory. But they always had an expectation they would go west, probably when Barry retired. And I think Suzanne accepted that was going to be part of their life. But this seemed very sudden to me, very, very sudden. And I do recall saying to her that I just thought it was so sudden. I said, I just don't understand. Macy was still in school. And she said, well, we love it. We miss Mallory, and we've always wanted, we need a change. And I said, well, I understand that, and I wanted to respect my sister's opinion to do as she wants. She's an adult, even though at times I think as her older sister, I should have treated her now in hindsight with a lot more respect and regard for her opinions instead of being the bossy older sister. I do have some regrets there. So, but we were starting a new relationship, building a little new foundation. And I tried to be excited for her. But on the same token, she did share with me something of a personal nature, some concern about her marriage to Barry, some suspicions she had, strong suspicions. And I cautioned her strongly as her sister that if there are problems in Indiana, there'll be problems in Colorado. You will.
One of the things I love about Melinda here is she has no guile. She is trying to be as fair as possible. Remember, this interview was 4 years ago, and they had not found Suzanne's body. So she is basically trying to balance this conversation, and I think she's done an amazing job. And when we went back and started looking at this again, I mean, what strikes you? I saw one comment up here that the girls have that same worldview as their mother, and maybe as Melinda here, which may explain some of the things. He is so controlling that they feel trapped under his spell. What do you think, hon?
Well, clearly 2018, even before they left Indiana and moved to Salida, Colorado, it seems, according to what Melinda's sharing, that is when things started to crack and break for sure. And I think it's really interesting. So in that 2018, it's interesting. So Melinda says, yeah, my sister called me one day basically and was starting to share that she had problems in her marriage. And Suzanne had suspicions that Barry was being unfaithful. That is what Melinda is sharing here in this interview. I think now we know, of course, we know more information about Suzanne and Barry and what Suzanne was doing. And I believe that, and this is all from the texting, and this information's already out there. So in April of 2018, I believe that's when Suzanne started to reach out to her old friend, Jeff Libler. And Barry and Suzanne moved in May, the next month of 2018, to Salida. So you can kind of see this layering going on of, now there could have been other cracks in their marriage earlier, but it seems that this was all coming to a head. And I remember, Chris, when we were doing our research and we went back to Indiana and we talked to a lot of people back there, a number of people close to the Morphews told us that Barry had burned a lot of bridges financially. There were lawsuits that he sued people. There was, sounded like some bad blood.
And he was being sued too, wasn't he, Karen?
Yes, I think the lawsuits were going both ways. All this was over finances and things with his landscaping business and some real estate. Remember, there was an old man who got kicked off his property, I believe by Barry. We can go back and get more details about that. So it seems to, like 2018, there was a crumbling of not just their relationship, but things around them going on in Indiana. And many people told us they thought the reason that the couple and family moved to Colorado was to try to get a fresh start. Take that for what it's worth. But it's interesting. We've now pinpointed this 2018 seems to be this breaking point for Suzanne in the relationship.
Yeah, it seems like out of the blue, she's talking to her sister about, hey, we're moving. And by the way, I need to tell you about all this other stuff that's happening behind the curtain. Is that the way you took that?
It is. And, I think Suzanne sounded like a very private person.
Right.
I saw a comment earlier in chat that somebody said Suzanne's hairdresser in Colorado seemed to know a lot more than her sister. Well, I don't think that's really a fair comment. And here's why. I mean, with family relationships, a lot of times, a lot of people keep things private. And certainly nobody knows what goes on inside anybody's marriage except those two people. And so you can kind of see that Suzanne wasn't somebody who put her business out on the street, so to speak. I think, we're in a culture right now, we're so used to so many people oversharing on social media so much of their lives that it might seem unfathomable to some people. Well, how could Suzanne be going through all this horrible stuff and not even confined to her sister? Well, her sister is 15 years older than her. Okay. It's not like they were necessarily the same age growing up. And people don't want to, admit to things that are going on in their own lives, let alone sharing it with family members. So I can really empathize that Suzanne took a long time to confide in her sister, "Hey, my marriage is in trouble. Barry's doing X, Y, and Z. I don't know what to do," if that's what she said. But I do think it's interesting that 2018 seemed to be a breaking point for Suzanne.
Good point.
Just take it with you,
Yeah, a record doesn't lose its spots, right?
Exactly. And I do recall saying to her, think long and hard about this decision, because I said to her, you're leaving your support system. You're leaving familiarity. Everything you know that you can fall back on, you're giving up to go there. And I felt a real check in my heart about it. I did. But on the other hand, I didn't want to rain on her parade. She was excited about it, and I've lived in Portland, Oregon for 19 years, and it's exciting to make a big move. It is exciting, a new adventure, and sometimes, I think in life, we think we'll hit the reset button. It's like hitting a big fat reset button and everything will just restart and we'll be good to go, and that's kind of the hopefulness I guess I felt from her that day. I did say to her cautionarily, I asked her if she would be willing to go talk to her elders at church. I said, Suzanne, you've been a member there for many, many years. That's what they're there for guidance, spiritual guidance. And I said, would you consider doing that? And her reaction was, if Barry found out, he'd be furious. So that was the end of that discussion. So they went ahead and made that move in May of that year. And we'd had that.
That's interesting, because what did you guys get out of that? I'm interested to hear what you folks are thinking. But it sounds like she was scared of him. Even at that point, to your point. In this conversation, she's having that conversation with, we're moving, the foundation's cracking. And, big sister saying, well, why don't you go talk to, a counselor? And she goes, are you kidding me? He'll blow a gasket. So I think she feels trapped. Caroline, I agree with you. Karen, what do you think?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. She absolutely felt that way. In my mind, if they had never made the move to Colorado, would she have been killed? I mean, can we even answer that question? As her sister said, her whole support system, was, she apparently willingly, or maybe, who knows, maybe she was intimidated and scared and felt like she had no choice but to go to Colorado and just put a happy face on it to her family. And so, whoever said it in chat, for sure, Barry was isolating her. She was completely isolated there.
Yeah, he's got total control, Brock, in here. And remember, we'll get to that later on, but remember how he transports all the stuff, has her clean out her car and fill it up with deer antlers.
Do you still have that picture?
I still have the photo. Yeah.
Can you show it later?
I'll have to pull it up. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay. All right.
I believe that was about February. I'm thinking February of 2018, she and I'd had that conversation, and they went ahead and left in May. So I supported her, as her sister. But I had my a little bit of deep concern.
Thank you, well, LB.
Sure.
Yeah.
Once they
ago,
made the move out to Colorado,
they're awesome.
Did Suzanne talk with you more about how their relationship, if things had gotten any better, if they were starting to potentially get worse at that point? Did she open up to you once they were there about their relationship?
Unfortunately, no, she didn't. And again, no, unfortunately, she didn't. However, I do know that she was attending some recovery meetings, some Al-Anon meetings there in Salida. I had encouraged her in Indiana to go that journey because she had struggled with some some unforgiveness towards my dad.
Now that's interesting because Suzanne would have fallen into the category of the peacemaker. She didn't want waves. She didn't want problems, and so she was subjective through that childhood trauma with her father being an alcoholic. And so, yeah, I mean, she had a lot of things going that kind of, I think he took obvious control over her and eventually controlled every moment of her day. Every moment of her day. Any thoughts jump out at you on after that comment, Karen?
It just goes to show how vulnerable she really was. Everybody has issues and things that they deal with in their life as adults.
Yep.
She had, I mean, she had a lot just dealing with the narcissist slash sociopath she was married to. She realized who she was married to. Add to that, dealing with an alcoholic father. Add to that, cancer coming back a second time. She had a lot going on, and I don't think I can kind of see how she did reach out to Jeff, the guy from her past. I'm not condoning it, but Suzanne had a lot on her plate psychologically. She was living isolated after May 2018, kind of stuck in Barry's, head or nightmare, whatever. I mean, yeah, her sister will tell us Suzanne picked out the house in Salida, Colorado, but had all those deer head antler things in the house, which she had in Indiana as well. This isn't just my opinion. She probably tolerated it, but it probably wasn't her first choice of decorating style. All of this to say, she had a lot. She wasn't just, a 49-year-old mom with one daughter at home and another daughter in college, and they moved to Salida, and, she's starting to understand, the difficulty of being married to a guy like Barry. I mean, she had a lot on her plate, and I'm glad we're learning more about this. I mean, Melinda shared this 4 years ago, but I had forgotten some of these details, and it just makes me feel even more sympathetic to Suzanne. I mean, I always did from the beginning. She's a murder victim, but all of this backstory really kind of shares with us what Suzanne was going through at this time.
Yeah, we're in the weeds here, and it's fascinating and looking backwards.
And
yes, he could be
I guess
watching.
It was 2016 or 17. She'd done some work here there in Indiana, in Al-Anon, and told me she was going to.
She was the younger. She was the youngest one.
Yes, the
So
baby.
she would be called the peacemaker.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And in that program, typically the youngest take on the role of no conflict, okay? And they want to get in between everybody and tie all the pieces together so that everybody is in harmony with each other. And the Al-Anon program is an amazing program for folks to tie those pieces together.
Yes.
Yeah. So I didn't mean to interrupt, but
Okay.
I apologize. But at the same time, I'm hearing what I'm learning and hearing here is her personality is just one of no guile.
Right.
She has no guile.
Right.
So with folks like that and women like that, it's they're the peacemakers. They want to fix everything. Don't worry, Melinda, I can fix it. I can keep it moving, and Barry on the other side of this, part of, his makeup obviously is the control mechanisms evident of the fact that you're giving her counsel as her older sister. You're following your gut to say to her, look, go to the church, go talk to your pastors, and then really measure this. If you think there are suspicions and or situations taking place, what's interesting about that is there's a paradigm shift, and in her thought process in totality that she shares with you, and that was that he would be enraged or fear. How did she describe it?
Furious. She said he'd be furious.
Yeah. So she knew that in the big picture that would be a trigger to potentially his secret life, as what we call it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So kind of unpack that a little bit more. When you heard that from your perspective, what did you say? I mean, how did you handle that?
Are you speaking about when she said he would be furious?
Yeah, if you remember.
Yeah. I said, well, he may well be, but I said, these are the people appointed to help you through these difficulties. I kept pressing the fact that that's the point. That's what they're there for. And, so let him be furious. But if the problem is the problem, address it. But there again, being passive, non-confrontational, we don't want a problem and we're just going to go along to get along. And that was her temperament, That was her temperament. And I do believe, she knew that if that happened, she just didn't want to face Barry's anger. That's all.
Yeah.
Or conflict.
Yeah. And that takeaway, obviously, from a woman's perspective, and my sweetheart will tell you all the time, you girls are never wrong, right? I mean, you're what do you always say?
It's the sixth sense.
Huh?
It's the sixth sense. We know.
Yeah, we know. Right.
We know. Women know. We know.
And now, if your sister said something like that, whoops, oh
no,
she just dropped her speaker. That's okay. She'll get it here in a second. Hang on. She's gonna reach down. Okay. It's right down there. So I love the green screen too, by the way, everybody. Hi.
Sorry, everybody.
So I'm just curious. If your sister Andy, if we can talk about your sister for a second, she's your older sister, but I see that this was a natural reaction to you handling your sister correctly, of saying, look, I'm not going to get in your business, and then simultaneously maybe there's a religious fix here for him,
right?
And it was more about Barry than it was for Suzanne. Would that be an accurate assessment?
Yes. Well, yes and no. I mean, my thought was she definitely needed guidance. If they needed to be able to counsel her, that if it was something she needed to deal with, and particularly being that they were going to make such a big move, I thought, this is important. This is primary important. Before you make a move, the relationship needs to be more intact, and you need to feel safe and secure making that kind of a gamble with somebody who, if your trust is waning in Indiana, it's certainly going to wane in Colorado. So, and she gave up so much. Like I said, the security, just the familiarity of people and places and so on. So I don't know.
Well, and you said she, her personality wasn't to make waves, wasn't to be confrontational. And so it fits right in with, her maybe hoping that things were going to be better and to go along and to try it. And then you said she sounded excited to you. So there sounds like there was some hope in there with her.
There was, Karen. There was hope there. And I couldn't press it any further than that. I just laid it out there and just left it, and it was really up to her to pick up the tools if she wanted to. But I wasn't going to further it and cause her to feel badly about the move, because as I said, Suzanne being the baby of the family, thinking about this over the last year, she lived on a little postage stamp her whole life, and she was, somebody's daughter, somebody's niece, somebody's mother. She was always there to fill other people's role. You know what I mean? And I just felt like Suzanne was starting to develop her own soul, get her own taste. We'd had a conversation about, she'd gotten a lot of my mom's things when my mom passed, being the youngest. Everybody kind of dumped on Suzanne, the dishes, the silver, you take this, you take that. And she ended up with all this stuff she really didn't want, but she was too nice to say, I don't want it. So she took it home, and we'd had a conversation, and she'd say, this stuff just weighs me down, Melinda. It just feels like a weight. I'm carrying this stuff around. I said, Suzanne, get your own stuff. Don't feel obligated to that stuff. If it's not you, get rid of it. Get what you like. And so when they moved to Colorado, that's exactly what they did. They sold everything that I know of. I wasn't there personally, but I have heard stories that they pretty much jettisoned everything and bought new when they got to Colorado, which is what Suzanne wanted to do. And I always encouraged her to do that, to have her own tastes and buy her own things that she liked.
Yeah, I heard the house in Indiana was a museum for Barry, and a trophy room underneath in the basement. All of his hunting trophies are, kind of, I guess that's testosterone on steroids, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and she was just kind of a part of it.
Yeah.
Just to kind of go along. I mean,
Well, and I'm curious, when she got to Colorado, was she able to pick out new things, or did what Barry say overrule her? Or do you feel like maybe she really did get to go furniture shopping or whatever, buy new things and decorate this new home? Or do you think, there was still his say was over everything?
No, I believe Suzanne. In fact, I have it on good authority. Even the house that they chose, I would have lost the bet. I would have said Barry chose the house, but I have it on good authority. Suzanne chose the house. I said, really? Yes. Suzanne chose the house, and she ordered new furniture herself. So she was making, again, back to Al-Anon. Suzanne was doing some work.
Okay, what's your takeaway on where we're at so far? She sounds like she's empowering herself.
It does sound like she was starting to empower herself. It does. I can't help but think two things. In my journalism career, when I covered crime, I spoke to so many victims and murder victim family and friends and people close to people who were murdered, who were killed. And so many times people would tell me, so and so was just starting to turn their life around when the murder happened. So and so was just getting on that path of getting out of, you name it, whatever deep, dark situation they were dealing with. And that's what this kind of reminds me of. Okay, so there's so many subtle, detailed nuances here. She supposedly picked out the house, picked out the furniture. I mean, my heart just kind of sinks. She was killed in that house. Okay. It was the trap she was trying not to be trapped in a way, in the way I read it. And so, yes, she was making these, strides perhaps of asserting herself up to a certain point. Again, let's go back to this personality. You aren't going to win going up against a malignant narcissist sociopath. It's not happening, especially isolated in an area. And again, it just shows that you really don't know the details, the day-to-day stuff of what went on in Suzanne and Barry's marriage, other than what we have on text or what close people, share with us, like Melinda. But, it's a dichotomy. It's like, okay, yes, maybe she was making some strides. I'm sure that Al-Anon counseling and sessions helped her, but she probably went home and realized, I can't change this guy. That ain't never going to happen. Am I trapped? What am I going to do? How am I going to handle this? What's your thought, Chris?
I never disagree with you on that. I think you're right on target. And I wonder if this is the time, that Jeff is really playing a behind the scenes role here. Like, you can do this, you've got me, I've got you. And I mean, is this kind of in that development, side of her where she's just looking to find somebody that loves her for who she is and not just be convenient that she's there. My heart goes out to her. I mean, the more I listen to Melinda of her saying, just empower yourself, and to think that empowerment started with her just picking out furniture, or picking out a house. Okay. I mean, it's really, really amazing how much control she was under. I can't wait for the trial to hear, these forensic experts, these psychologists come in and start laying it out on, battered women syndrome and a variety of other situations that she was trapped in, because she has no control here. He has total control here. He's just, it's almost like, you're throwing, a piece of fruit to an animal that you've got trapped with inside of a container. It's horrible, but it's important for us to continue to go back and listen to this, because Melinda has a lot of insight, and she's going to be a very powerful witness for the prosecution and the defense. But the defense is not going to like it because she's talking nice about him. But then on the other side of the coin, she drops in, but I knew. But she's not really saying it yet. She'll say it in trial.
Work of recovery, and she was starting to see who Suzanne really was. And
Sure.
and she was starting to make some good decisions that she wanted to make, not that somebody else was making for her. And
Sure.
part of that was, choosing the house, choosing the furniture, and building her nest the way she wanted finally. So
That's
the
great.
back, I'm, being sensitive here, but being, a straight shooter as a whole. I pictured, your sister, unfortunately, fitting that role of, within the battered women syndrome. What I mean by that is not, necessarily a physical, a punching type of problem, but more of an emotional, more of a verbal punching bag. And here's why I'm going to qualify that. Okay. Because she was obviously trying to, and you mentioned it as well, she's trying to discover who Suzanne is.
mm-hmm.
And here's a woman who has, gone through cancer, being told you won't have children, and then having the windows of heaven open and children come, and yet simultaneously living a life of two personas, a public and a personal life, knowing that there was also a private life that was taking place, or a secret life that was taking place potentially within Barry, and her observation of that, just a piece of it, okay, comes to the conclusion where she comes to the conclusion of, look, and I need help here. And so what does she do? She reaches out to you two, connect as sisters, and correct me if I'm wrong. And then you counsel her to say, well, if there is some other things going on, well, I mean, let's put it out there. If Barry's being unfaithful, okay, then going to Colorado is not going to change that at all.
Right.
So, well, I think what Suzanne saw and heard in that, and by the way, God bless you for empowering her in that moment.
Yes.
Okay. I have, been in this game since 1982, and I've talked to a lot of people in my time, And it's the women who never have an older sister to say, look, here's some counsel, here's some thoughts, but you need to stand on your own. And then simultaneously, you need to pay attention to while you're standing and figuring out who you are and what's going on. And I see your sister going to Colorado, and I also see some of the wheels coming off of the bus in Barrie at this time during the move. I have the photographs of the trailer and the truck, okay, of how they packed it up and how he packed it up. And, you know, his Bobcats up there, his gun safes up there, all the, you know, the antlers and all the stuff is there. But I don't see a signature of Suzanne in that.
Right.
And so I still sense that she is having doubts at that point of, well, maybe I should do this, maybe I shouldn't do this. Did you sense any of that in your conversations with her during that, you know, transition time to Colorado?
No, I didn't. In fact, I didn't have that many conversations with her, and you know, and sometimes, you know, I will say this, that my experience with Suzanne was when we got a little too close to home with some reality, she'd pull back.
Okay.
She'd pull back, and she would, you know, maybe pull away for a while. When she, and that was just her little passive aggressive way. That was just one of her little
Sure.
quirks. And you get a little
Sure.
too close, she just whoop. So I was always tried to be very measured, very careful how I said things to her, so I didn't frighten her off, you know, but plant a seed nonetheless, just plant a little seed, right? And hope that it'll stick somehow. But I think at that time she had made up her mind that she was going to go through with this. And I think she allowed the excitement of the new adventure to carry her forward, honestly. You know,
Sure.
I do believe that. And I think that at the time, I think she was personally, um, she had some issues with my dad. And I
Sure.
think that at the time, that move seemed very attractive because it got her, gave her some distance, you know, gave
Sure.
her some distance. And so I think that was something else that kind of motivated her in that
Yeah.
move. That's my opinion.
Yeah, no, and you know better than anybody. And I think, you know, some of that obviously stems from the divorce where she was the youngest. She
Mhm.
took the brunt of that emotional burden. And then she marries a very controlling, you know, a dominant narcissistic personality, okay, who is going to determine, you know, essentially, you know, you know, go change. Okay. Are you seriously going to wear that? One of those things. Okay. And Suzanne would, you know, passive aggressive be, of course, you know, pull back and that all of that. And I think the experts will testify are defense mechanism and safety mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Within the human experience of her environment. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It quite frankly, it endears me even further to her as a victim
Yes.
in this whole process, because at this point it's almost as if she's trying to, you know, keep everything together, not only for perception but more importantly for the girls, for her own sense. Okay. And then trying to, you know, is almost Barry is just kind of like, okay, well, he's we're married, and therefore because we're married it does say, you know, till death do us part. Okay. And I can see your sister buying into that and quite frankly she did, she bought into it to the end.
Yeah.
Probably until there became a trigger point that she says, I just can't do this anymore. And which kind of leads me, what are your thoughts, honey? I mean, I don't want to.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we all agree. You can see a lot in hindsight, right?
Exactly.
And, you know, I mean, Melinda's a loving sister, and, you know, I'm sure as you've shared with us, you shared with her, but ultimately, Suzanne had to make her decisions, and she certainly had a lot of love around her, a fabulous, wonderful, caring family. But yeah, if you hold stuff close to your chest, and you are very cautious to let people in, then they can't help as much as they would hope.
So interesting. Yeah. So interesting. Then at this point, the Colorado moves is made, but now we have a second bout of cancer.
Yes, we do.
Another fight, an emotional fight, physical fight, spiritual fight, but this is singular to your sister.
Yes.
Karen, what do you think so far?
What Melinda shares with in the next minute or two, I think is pretty profound.
Okay.
So let's go to that, and then then we'll stop for a minute.
And the comments in the chat are off the hook. We love you guys. It's really your insight. You're teaching me, and most definitely looking back at this, I'm learning so much more about Suzanne and her life through the window of Melinda's soul.
How does that unpack that? How does that unfold from what you recall?
Well, again, I was just stunned when we had this initial conversation about the move, and then her diagnosis came shortly after that. That was stunning to me, that she would consider leaving her medical professionals to during such a time as being having cancer once again show its ugly head. But she was resolved. She was resolved that she could have treatments once she got to Colorado. There would be qualified doctors. And I know, at the caution of my dad was very worried about them making this move at that time, and not at least postponing it possibly until they could, get Suzanne the treatment and see her through and into remission again. So I wrote down, I did a little math on that, and it was Suzanne was in remission for 26 years from this old age lymphoma. She was 21 the first time, and then 47 it hit again. So it's a long stretch. That is a very long stretch to be cancer free. And I dare say that it has crossed my mind that the stress my sister lived under had a lot to do with this resurgence of cancer in her life.
Let's stop right there.
That she could live, she was a very
The stress my sister lived under had everything to do with her cancer coming back. Wow. That's a pretty profound statement from the sister, who really knew her very well, really well. So, that jumped out at me. The stress from the husband potentially brought on, the second bout of cancer. I'm one to have always believed that where the mind goes, the body follows. And I think a lot of people have their own experiences throughout their life that maybe they feel similarly. And I've always been of the opinion, let us know what you guys think in chat, but I wholeheartedly believe, I think Melinda is absolutely correct. I think when you're living under so much stress, the body has to react. And in this case, Melinda thinks that Suzanne's cancer came back because it was the same cancer. Apparently, it wasn't a new cancer. It was the same cancer, from what she said, because of the stress she was living under with Barry. Wow.
Fascinating.
She was very strong spiritually, but my sister was a very slight person and very sensitive, and I just couldn't help but believe that had a lot to do with it, living under that unpredictability, and that, as I call it, the wild card, where you never know what tomorrow is going to be like, what card's going to flip up with the person you're living with, what they're going to want to do, insist on doing, and you're going to have to figure out how to get along with that. And I think under those conditions, Suzanne was under a lot of stress that she never shared with people.
I think Melinda is going to cut loose on the stand listening to this, and because she's holding back. I mean, do you sense that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes,
because
absolutely.
I mean, she's using words like the wild card, you never know. I mean, that comes from, two places. One, obviously their father was an alcoholic, so you never knew what dad you were going to get that night. Is it the good dad? Is it the evil dad? Is it the drunk dad? What's going to happen that day? And she's living in the, not an alcoholic environment, but a walking on eggshell type of environment. That's my takeaway on that. Am I off base there, or are you picking up on that?
Yeah, I'm definitely getting similar vibes. She's carefully choosing words. She's careful about what she's sharing and revealing. And yeah, I agree with you. I hope she is. Will be an incredible witness for prosecution, and it will be fascinating to hear her testimony on the stand. I agree with you. I think she'll let out a lot more in court, knowing it's now or never. Say what's on your heart, because this is the only time. If you want justice for your sister, share everything.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be home for this meeting, and no, we're gonna get the popcorn out because I think she's going to blow the doors off of the Chevy.
People very much.
Did you talk with her much when she went through the second round of cancer and the treatment? And, if she talked about compare and contrasting it to the first time, 26 years prior, anything like that you remember?
No, we didn't, in fact. And at the time, I will tell you, I don't know if this has come out or not. Maybe I think I can probably share this, but at the time Barry and Suzanne made this move, my dad was, his wife had passed, Luann had passed in 2016. So my dad was a widower, and my brothers and my nephew had worked due diligent to get my dad's finances in order because his wife had pretty much taken care of a lot of those things. So they got his finances in order. Of course, Barry and Suzanne were going to make this move, and they wanted that big mansion of a house. And my dad happened to be visiting their home during this time. And it was kind of, oh, by the way, we're short $100,000. And my dad had this cash on hand. My brothers and all had gotten his finances. And he said, on a short term, I can loan it to you short term to get this house. I guess that's what they were short, so to speak. And which was fine. It was my dad's money. It was for his to do what he wanted, but it was going to be a very short-term loan just until their house in Arcadia sold. So you know how sometimes those things turn out. The house doesn't sell and the loan continues and we don't see the money, right? So that created a lot of animosity with my brothers and frankly with me. I felt it was very irresponsible. The way Barry and Suzanne went about that. It did create some friction, a little distance there because our dad is very elderly and that's all he had to live on. So I do remember talking to my dad about this. I said, Dad, it's creating some real problems. And I said, why don't you just ask Barry and Suzanne for just a promissory note, very simple, just to put on file, because at your age, if something happens, there's no proof, And I said, that's your estate. It's good business, Dad. He said, well, honey, that's right. And I guess I will. So he made a call to Barry Morphew about it because now months had gone by and the house hadn't sold yet. So the repayment hadn't been made. And Barry's reaction to my dad was pretty startling. He said, Gene, I just can't believe you don't trust me. When my dad asked him just for a simple promissory note, he turned the tables and shamed my dad. And shamed him. And my dad was really taken aback. And then in the next breath said, actually, it's Suzanne you need to get the note from. She's the one who borrowed the money. So he completely extricated himself out of that responsibility, shamed my dad, and threw Suzanne under the bus at the same time.
Well, that's called triangulation. That's called there's a word for it. Yeah.
Is it? Yeah. And I mean, I was furious. I was absolutely furious.
And you should have been. Absolutely.
my dad has, as I've said, helped Barry Morphew over the years and was more generous to him even than his own sons, gave him a lot more breaks than even my brothers got. They paid full boat and went all the way, but Barry got, some good treatment. And I just thought that was appalling. And so I just say all that to say, when Barry and Suzanne moved to Colorado, this was looming in the family, and it created friction. And Suzanne, then it distanced her from all of us, because now she owes this money, or they owe this money, and nobody's willing to do the right thing. So it did create a natural barrier. Not that we were upset over the money, it was the principle of just not being willing to do good business and be responsible. So that at that time, Suzanne was having those treatments, would have been through this time. So that created, I'd say, a little distance between all of us. So I was not, I knew she was going through her treatments, and it wasn't like I wasn't speaking to her. It's just, she withdrew from us as well.
Absolutely.
Because she didn't want to deal with that. She did not want to deal with that. And she didn't want to deal with Barry. And, and it just was a mess for a little while. So her friends there in Salida rallied around her church friends and her neighbors. Yep. She got a lot of good support there. I know that. So, but, even Barry, I know was, I heard through the grapevine that he had used that. Suzanne's, her brothers and sisters didn't support her in her cancer treatment in Colorado. Well, what he fails to talk about is the whole thing that was going on. He tells the part that makes him look good, throws everybody else under the bus.
Right.
So
Context.
There was a lot more context. Exactly. There were a lot more things going on there. So, but Suzanne did come through the treatments, and 26 years, chemotherapy has been perfected, drugs to help with nausea, and all the things that Suzanne had in those earlier treatments that were so devastating. She got along really beautifully. I'd get pictures. She would send us pictures of her getting her chemo, and she looked lovely, and she came through. She came through.
Yeah, the interesting thing about individuals such as Barry, from my opinion and my experience, is they're always the victim.
Exactly.
Right? They're always the victim, and therefore anybody or anything around them that and that came very clear to me when I was talking to your dad one day. And he told me that Barry had called him right after Suzanne's missing. I think it was a week or so. I don't remember the exact time frame, but it was very short, right after she was missing. And he made the way he framed a question, and I don't know if you remember this or not, but your dad told me, he said, Chris, he said, when Barry called me, he said, Gene, and this is when he was looking for the guardianship paperwork.
Yes.
Okay. And he said, Gene, I loved your daughter. And your father, to his credit, turned it back to Barry and said, what do you mean you loved my daughter? Okay. And that was the day your father said, I'm not signing anything.
Yes.
And that in of itself, again, right there, was very, his MO, modus of operandi, okay, his MO on how to manipulate a scenario or a circumstance to fit the narrative. Yes. And I don't think he anticipated YouTube or other, social media pieces of the puzzle that could potentially derail any type of narrative that he felt would, make him look like he was not, the triangulation here to your dad as the example of that, right? Turning the pages on your family. And so these stressors are there at this point. She's going through chemotherapy. He's now, having discussions with your family and most definitely Suzanne about this $100,000 that, he said that she borrowed when in fact, it was a collective. And by the way, I know the other side of that story. I know he asked for the money. Okay. And so I know your sister, based on what I've understood, was also, trying to keep the peace between him and that conversation, which quite frankly, if it was my family, I would have done the exact same thing and said to my brother-in-law, dude, you owe him the money, pay it. Okay.
Right.
And it just fits right into Suzanne's personality of kind of, she's got the cancer to deal with, she's got the girls to deal with. They're buying this house and he's not paying back what he said he would pay back. And so, there had to be some other things behind, as we'll say, behind the curtain, that had to be going on. And just out of curiosity, what was your takeaway when he tried to turn that on your dad overall? I mean, how did your brothers and how did the rest of your family handle that? Because she's obviously now, quite frankly, she's thousands of miles away from everybody, and she had to be scared of him.
Well, I honestly didn't put that together to specifically that at that time with those finances. I did encourage my older brother, who was really upset with Suzanne, and I said, well, sometimes we just, we don't understand things. There is a thing of being ignorant, and there's nothing wrong when you don't know, you just don't know. And I said, why don't you write her a very informative email and just share with her what you're struggling with and what you hope she'll do, what you hope they will do to go forward from here, and just be transparent with her and help her to learn from this situation. Because I said, she's the baby of the family. I said, where is she going to learn this? If you need to step it up, David, and send her an email to help her see what needs to go forward. It's one thing to just know the problem, but let's get in the solution here. We need to get in the solution, and for Suzanne as well, because I knew it put her in a pressure cooker with Barry. Finances put her in a pressure cooker with Barry. So I think David did, after all, he did write her an email, and they were able to have a conversation. And it wasn't too long after that they saw their way to pay my dad in whole. And that was even before the property, before the house sold. They came up with the funds and repaid the loan. So I think they were doing payments. Yes, they'd agreed to do some payments, but they did get it all paid back to him. So that was a good thing. And I think Suzanne really was the one that pushed that with Barry. And I attribute that to probably her work in her Al-Anon work in Salida. I think she took hold and did the right thing,
I think it's fascinating that these details now, 5 years later, we look back and we realize she was in a pressure cooker. Her older brother, her older sister, the loan to the dad, from the dad. I mean, there's just so many moving parts going here. The cancer, Jeff, the boyfriend, Barry checking out at times, the suspicion with him, and all of the things he was doing, the fact that he's stalking her, she's out with her girlfriends. Barry shows up out of nowhere. I mean, this poor girl, how much can you take? I mean, Karen, help me understand this.
Yeah, again, that's why this is really, really helpful for us to walk back through this and revisit her story. What was going on in Suzanne's life at the time that she was murdered, or what led up to it? These are all really big, big, big things. And there's so much contrast here. There's a lot of subtlety. It's never one way or black and white. At this point, she was a victim of domestic violence. Did she know it? Did she fully know it? Was she starting to realize that she was a victim and that she was trapped? And what was she going to do? How was she going to get out of it? In the meantime, there are all these other things going on, as you say, the cancer, huge, chemotherapy. She's in a new city, a new state. She didn't know anybody. She's, isolated. The oldest daughter's in college. Her husband's acting like, how he, maybe worse, maybe all of his, whatever the right word is, how he treated her was getting worse. To call it a pressure cooker is really an understatement. What she was living with at the time. And this part of the video, this part of Melinda's conversation with us, she talks about Suzanne's last text messages to her the day before, on Friday, the day before she was murdered. And let's roll the tape and let's listen to that.
In spite of the friction that it might have caused. So,
do you think? Now I understand he also borrowed money from another friend of his in Indiana to offset some of that finances of the house as well. Yeah. Did he treat that individual the same way that he treated your dad? Do you know?
I don't have any knowledge of that, Chris. I mean, I do. I have heard that he did borrow a significant amount of money from other people to buy the house, which I'm just like, who does that? I don't know. I don't do that, but maybe that's something that other people do. But I thought, that's if you can't afford it, you just can't afford it. You can't go to the bank and borrow it. You just don't borrow it.
Yeah. And that was interesting, Melinda, that you had the impression of how he was years prior of a guy who didn't want debt,
right,
who wanted to pay cash for everything or not buy it. So now years down the road, now you're seeing all, debt. You're seeing, borrowing money for a home that he couldn't afford. Right. Clearly.
Clearly. Yeah. Again, that's it. What started out to be a very, and we all drift, I guess. But there was certainly some drifting going on there away from the principle of not borrowing, so.
Was he pulling away further from your family? And do you sense in retrospect, looking back, that he was pulling Suzanne with him? Or is that a reach? I don't want to stretch here. I'm just trying to understand some of the dynamics as that's kind of all unfolding.
As I look back, my mother passed in 2018, or excuse me, 2013. 2013. Our grandmother, who Suzanne was very close to, passed in 2015. My dad's wife died in 2016. So we lost some, and Suzanne's stepfather, our stepfather, Dr. Fred, he died in 2012. So 2012, 2013, 2015, 2016, we had deaths of 4 very significant people in all of our lives, and particularly in Suzanne's life. Right. And so, I think that was having an effect. And I think that how should I say? They kind of guarded. They were a little bit of a standard bearer, and I think when that began to fall away, Barry and Suzanne's life, I started seeing a shift. I started seeing some compromises and some things that I hadn't seen before. I think that maybe freedom. I don't know. I think that had a big shift in Barry and Suzanne both when people, the elders of our family, began to die. I think it really had an effect on them both.
And Barry had this, fatalistic idea that he would die young, even as his father. One of his closest friends told me that his dad obviously died at a young age and was kind of an interesting character. But and I'm not going to go there this evening. But at the same time, I think it all plays into the dynamics of what's taking place here, where now they're going to make a transition into Colorado. She is having, a premonition or whatever we want to call it, that there may be some infidelity problems taking place here. She's got on top of that all of the deaths that you're experiencing here, and then simultaneously, now they're taking out a loan from your dad to buy this crazy house in Colorado, and with the anticipated hope that she can keep, all the glue in the ship and keep all the shiplap together before all the leaks start coming in.
Right.
And so, she really is the captain of where this ship is going in terms of keeping it above the water. And quite frankly, I see him more, based on my research, him becoming more and more distant, more isolating in relationship to, diving more into business, diving more into hunting, kind of, them almost like you say, she's trying to empower herself and then simultaneously volunteering, because I know she volunteered at the church to help other women who potentially found themselves in these domestic, struggles, we'll call it, right? And so she's almost turning her life experience into counseling, because she's been there, done that, and which goes again. I love your sister even more tonight, because that goes into this idea that really this was a perfect storm, for Barry, and to to find the place that we find ourselves in today, and your sister really is a victim, a real victim.
She is.
And we can't change what's taken place, obviously, and that will come out in time in trial. But I have to ask you, I know she must have been in communication with you towards the weaning, the between the 9th or up to the 9th or the 10th or whatever.
Yes.
What can you, and if you don't feel comfortable, and I totally respect that, but can you give us a sense of what she was sensing before all of this even occurred?
Yes, I'd be happy to, Chris. It was Friday, May the 8th. Suzanne that morning had sent me a very lengthy text. I won't go into the content, that is given over to the authorities, but I can give you a general sense of the text and what it said to me. It was a very lengthy text, when it comes in those chunks and it just keeps rolling, and it was significant. It kind of came as a surprise, because there was nothing of our conversations that led up to this. So it was just kind of like boom. And I read the text that morning, and I wasn't shocked. I've always known. I mean, Suzanne and I, let's just say this. Let's say it this way. I'll use my mother's words. My mother used to say, over the many years, she'd say, I'd never believe I'd have 2 daughters who would marry men who were so much alike. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
So Suzanne and I had journeys together. We had intuitive journeys. We had unspoken journeys. We identified a lot. That morning, I got this text, and I was not surprised, because I felt the secrecy, the quietness, the isolation. I could see these things developing and I knew that Suzanne was doing her work in Al-Anon. She continued, and she had told a friend of ours that it was the best decision she ever made, and she was so glad I had encouraged her to do that. You know, it was good work for her.
Yeah, definitely.
So that I'm so grateful for. But that morning, that text was so transparent. It was raw. There was not a cry for help. There was no I'm in danger. There was none of that. You know, I would have immediately gone into action. But
Sure.
it was a very transparent text, which told me and has told the authorities her state of mind that morning. It's very clear. It's a powerful text, and it was so powerful at the time that this is going to sound funny, but I have accidentally in the past forwarded the wrong text to the wrong person. Have you ever done that? Thinking
Yeah.
you're forwarding this to that person and it goes to the wrong person.
You should see me drive.
We all
Okay.
have.
Yeah,
Okay.
we've all done
So
it. Yeah.
so that was one of the first things I thought of. I thought, oh, I can't leave this on my phone. I could accidentally text that to the wrong person, and I don't
Sure.
want that to fall in the wrong hands. So
Right.
it went into my heart, and I decided I would delete that text. But before I did, I had texted her immediately back, and I had said to her, I need to pray about this because I want to respond correctly. It wasn't going to be shoot from the hip, big sister. It was going to be, you need some real wisdom here, you know, on how to help her navigate. And like I said, it she wasn't in danger. That would have been easy to do, but I wanted to be thoughtful in my response to her and respectful of who she is. So she said, I'll read you the last text she sent me because I still have it on my phone. Her response back to me, just a minute. I want to say it exactly. I don't want to muff
And
this
this
up.
was Friday the 8th. What time did the text come in that morning, if you remember?
Just a minute, I'll tell you because I've got the her response. I responded to her at 11:35 a.m. That was Tennessee time, and she immediately came back. I told her, I said, I'm going to pray before responding further. I care. And she responded immediately within 1 minute. She said, I appreciate your love and transparency always. And that was the last thing my sister ever said to me. And I keep that text. I cherish that text from her. And I texted her one day at a time. I said one day at a time. So that was the only thing I responded to her at that moment. And I really didn't have a response for her. And it is my belief as her sister. Saturday was a very hard day for me. That night when I went to bed, I had an unbelievable grief that came over me, and I didn't know why. I did not know why. And my devotion for that day was from the book of Job, which I read that night, and it says, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh, blessed be the name of the Lord. And it was all about learning to praise God when things are not the way we want, you know, not just when we get it the way we want it, but sometimes we learn to thank God and be grateful when we don't get what we want. And it was that night was very difficult. And another friend of hers had a similar experience on Saturday night. And it is
Let's
my
stop it
belief
right there
that my
for a second,
sister
Chris.
went on to be with the Lord on Saturday night.
I just want to underscore that. Extremely powerful what Melinda just shared. Suzanne last texted her Friday. She was sending support, love. Let me pray about this. Let me think about what I can say. Take one day at a time. And then the very next day, Melinda says that when she went to bed, she had an unbelievable grief come over her Saturday night. Now, obviously, we know Suzanne was killed Saturday afternoon. Again, I just think it's so powerful to have a close sibling who felt, who felt something spiritual, something bigger and well beyond her, and she knew something bad happened to Suzanne that night. She also shares Suzanne had another friend or two who also felt something bad happened. Now, we don't know if Suzanne had texted those other friends. Maybe it was on Saturday. Maybe the doom was getting larger for Suzanne leading up to before she was killed. We don't know. It's just me speculating at that point. But I do think it's extremely powerful that her sister said she had an unbelievable grief come over her at the time that we know that Suzanne was killed. What's your thought?
I think, yeah. I mean, I have no words. When she was saying that, I was just riveted to listening. And, because you know how I feel, there's always a spiritual dynamic in death investigation. Always. And, it's to hear her say that and the intensity of it, where she has saved it. It's still on her phone. I'll guarantee it. Right.
Yeah.
And then when it goes to trial and she's sitting there with the devil in the courtroom, it becomes even more powerful. The fight, good versus evil. It also, I think what's fascinating is she is in conversation with her on the 8th and telling her one day at a time, just, just keep pushing whatever that is. And that the two of them had that sisterly bond, because I've watched you support your sister in times, and I just get the same feeling that that's where they were at. It's like this unspoken yet spoken supernatural connection, for lack of a better term. So.
Let's keep going.
That's what I feel in my heart. And
Saturday night or Friday night?
Well, I believe Saturday, but
we'll wait to see.
We'll wait to see.
And we didn't know at that time.
We intuitively, a couple of us who were very close to her intuitively felt something that we didn't really understand.
Yeah.
So something very deep.
Wow. Melinda, you have incredible strength, and your spiritual strength is extremely admirable, and your overall strength is just really incredible. I mean, I'm reading some of the chat. So many people are just, amazed at what a strong, wonderful woman you are, and wow, for Suzanne to have such a great sister.
Thank you.
Yeah. What do you say? What do you say?
Yeah, I think it's a testament to the universe is on schedule, and that transparency that your sister felt and feels about you. I just saw a note come up. It's still there.
Yes.
And she's made an impact. You've made an impact on millions of people across the world, around the world. And there's not really much anybody can say outside of this idea that sometimes we're asked to go down these valleys. And there was years ago in our own journey of life, there would have been different experiences, but sometimes you're asked to push rocks, and you push and you push, and then at some point you pray and ask for help, and you get an answer, and that answer is let me see your back. And you turn around and you're chiseled from all that pushing. Let me see your arms, and you show them their arms, right? And then you hear this presence that says, reach up and grab that. And you grab it, and then you say, now put your foot right there. And you put your foot there, and the next thing you know it, you climb, and you're on top of the rock. And next thing you know it, you have this idea that says, I was only asked to push. I was not asked to move it. And I think your family has been pushing, and that as you go forward here, I just want to encourage you that, just keep maintaining the faith as you have, and as you are, and that, I think at some point, maybe, and I say maybe, and always preface, I always preface this with, the families that I've ever worked with, through these types of crises, is I always ask them, keep your seatbelt on, okay, but simultaneously, let's hope that the airbag works, okay, if we hit another collision here, which leads me into this idea that says, okay, what do you hope Barry will do now that he's having to face for the first time in his life, this idea that he is,
in retrospect, saying that, thinking about it now, and just, watching this and hearing myself say that, I had no idea that they were going to release him. But I'm grateful that, they were potentially ready for that impact. Because the system, the court system is just so interesting. We had no idea that the first trial would never even take place, and that he would walk out and then turn the dial back to them by filing lawsuits and all this other stuff. But I don't, I always attribute, the Lord's inspiration, that he saw it coming. And, when I said that, I had no idea that Barry would be walking the first time. So it's interesting.
Fallen, and that he needs to kind of figure out, what this is all about versus, keep continuing to live this facade. So what are your feelings there about that?
I have some very unusual feelings about Barry Morphew these days. I hold no hatred and I have no malice towards Barry in my heart. I've done business with my God and forgiven Barry for what I perceive he did. And I live that way because I want to be free.
Sure.
My sister was taken, and there's no more that's going to be taken from me if I have anything to say about that. I remember when this first happened, I have a beautiful picture at home of Barry with a turkey that he shot in Tennessee on a visit to our home. Beautiful turkey. The feathers all spread out as they are. They're so beautiful. And Mallory and Macy are just little girls, maybe 4 and 6, 7, 8. And they're on either side of their dad in the front of our yard. And the background is a beautiful lake in the mountains. And those little girls, Macy's got her little leg kicked up and her arm around her dad. And both girls are embracing him, When this first happened, I just felt God saying, put that on your refrigerator, Melinda. Put that on your refrigerator. So I got that little picture and I put it on my refrigerator. And I said, this is what I choose to remember. I choose to remember a Barry Morphew, whose daughters love him and adore him. My sister loved him. She loved Barry Morphew. She was deeply committed to her marriage and her two daughters. There's no one more committed than Suzanne was. She was becoming weary of the challenges that were not changing in her marriage. I know that. She was becoming weary. I believe that Suzanne was not wanting to destroy her marriage, but I believe she was becoming very weary of the challenges that she kept facing that weren't changing. And there was no change in Barry Morphew. And my sister, I think, was coming to terms with the fact that she was growing, she was getting stronger in her faith, and that her life might have taken a different turn, which would have provided her, I think, a lot more serenity and peace and freedom, and the ability to be honest. Yeah. My sister wanted that transparency that she saw. She wanted to be transparent with her life, with God, with herself, and with other people. That's what she wanted. There's a great freedom in that. Unashamed. And I think that Suzanne hid a lot of things in order to protect Barry's doings. And I think she was very wary of that. I think she was very tired of that. And she wanted something different. She loved her girls. That would never change. Those girls are her heart and soul. Yeah. She loved Mallory and Macy. And I would say that Barry Morphew, for all the years he was married, sat across from the greatest gift he ever got. Yeah. And the greatest capacity to heal him sat right across the table from him every day. And unfortunately, he couldn't receive the gift.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no question about it. And that is very, very eloquent how you've presented this tonight about her. And I see a question here about, has Ellie recovered that text? The answer is yes.
Yes. Yes.
They have that text. Yeah. There are a couple programs out there that they can get, and then of course they can subpoena all the carriers. Yes. So, what you?
I'll tell you that because we just kind of start just chit chatting there towards the end. So, oh my goodness, that last part. I mean, I'm out of words.
I'm not. So, a few things. Let's not confuse forgiveness with justice. This reminds me of a widow standing up very recently saying she forgives the person who took the life of her husband. Melinda just told us in this interview that she chooses to forgive Barry because she doesn't want to carry the hate in her heart. She didn't say justice should not be served. She very much wants to see justice served. I think that's a very strong, committed, religious person that can stand up and say that. I tell you what, people who stand up and can forgive others that take the life of a loved one, man, more power to them. I don't think I could do that. But regardless, Melinda said, she does forgive him, but she's all about justice for her sister. Another thing too, another point she makes at the end is that she says that she is humbled and honored to speak for her sister. I think when we look back at the Suzanne Morphew story, let's let Suzanne's story be an example and to all of us, and if in our own circles, if there's one other woman we can save by asking questions, getting somebody to open up, if we can save one person from an abusive relationship, then Suzanne's story has meaning. And that's what I always think about. She was a victim of domestic violence. She was. Plain and simple. This is the same story that, Chris, we've seen this in so many murder cases in the last 5 years. Women who are getting ready to leave toxic relationships, abusive husbands, and this is the most vulnerable time. Several people in chat have talked about it tonight. It's the scariest time for women at that point. So if there's anything we can do, we can have conversations with those closest to us. If we see something, let's say something to our relatives, our close friends, coworkers, whoever, family members, whoever this may be. And then let's always remember Suzanne's story to try to be an example to help somebody else out there. And I would just add, let's get justice for Suzanne. Seems to be on track this time. So let's hope and pray that Suzanne and her family will get justice.
Well said. I'm not going to say another word. That was very eloquent and well said. So we're going to do another follow-up. It may be Wednesday, where we're going to go over Suzanne's state of mind, right up to what Melinda was talking about, the 8th. So look for that coming up this week. It's probably going to be Wednesday. And Karen and I are working on the second piece of this. And so we want to thank each and every one of you this evening for being with us and visiting with us. I think this was very, very powerful to go back and to take a look at this conversation before Suzanne her body was found. Because at that time, remember, Melinda was working under the pretext of, I don't want to say too much, too fast, because she was hoping that there was going to be a trial coming up that very first time. But ultimately, that airbag did go off, and he walked, and he's out right now walking around. And so I'm sure she's very conscientious of that as well, probably watching tonight. And if you are, Melinda, thank you so much for trusting us. Karen and I are always grateful. I mean, we've become, friends over the last almost 5 years. It's crazy. So justice for Suzanne. And we're so grateful for each and every one of you being here this evening. And we hope that we continue to bring you quality content. And we would be just grateful that if you could hit the subscribe button and send this around forever, we would be appreciative of that. Thank you, mods. Thank you, Patreon members and our YouTube members. Aloha, and we will see you on the next one.
Hard working every day, I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts, wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah, make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away, you and me, go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face in Hawaii. With you, away. Yeah, we're taking away. Don't hesitate now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. We'll never come down. We're going away. Yeah, we're going away. You and me. Feeling the sun on my face in a while.